Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video I'm so excited for because I'm going to be chatting about some of my all-time favorite reads. More specifically, I'm going to be chatting about 7 books I would sell my soul to have the opportunity to read for the first time again. I love these books for a variety of different reasons, but all of them come to mind as some of the best reading experiences I had when I read them for the first time. First book I have to talk about is a book that completely took me by surprise. Truth be told, I did not have like incredibly high expectations when I picked this book up, especially because the Goodreads rating is kind of like so-so. I absolutely devoured this book. I loved it from beginning to end. It was almost like a joyful reading experience for me. I was obsessed. That is a feeling I feel like I'm constantly chasing when reading, and the book I'm talking about is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Obviously, Silvia Moreno Garcia is by far and away one of my favorite authors, but truthfully, this book completely surprised me and skyrocketed right to the top of my favorite of her entire books that she has released so far. But this book is honestly perfect for fans of Jane Austen, really intense melodrama, and of course, romance. This book is heavy on the propriety, heavy on the will they, won't they, heavy on the society politics, and I was entranced from beginning to end. And better yet, this book also has a dash of magic, combining a romance vibe and a fantasy vibe to such great success. In the story, we follow our main character, Nina, and Nina dreams of becoming part of the Beautiful Ones, a group of socialites in her town, and she herself has just debuted into society. But Nina is sort of making a splash in all of the wrong ways. First off, Nina has telekinetic powers, which is something she's kind of always been taught to keep hidden, but she has a hard time doing so. She also was sort of raised in the countryside, so people kind of view her as an uncultured person kind of traveling to the city. Nina's cousin-in-law, though, is very beautiful, and she is a part of the Beautiful Ones, and she sort of dreams of making a good connection at the start of this season. But everything is sort of thrown off when Nina, at one of the first parties she attends, meets a very mysterious man named Hector. Hector is actually a telekinetic magician himself, but instead of having to hide his powers, he actually travels all around the world performing. And soon, Nina sort of dreams of becoming his apprentice and learning more magic from him. And he actually happily obliges. But things are not what they seem, because Hector has secrets himself, and specifically they are tied to Nina's cousin-in-law. I think one of the most lush and melodramatic situations I simply have ever read. It was also so good and entrancing. There's definitely a lot of miscommunication and lies present in this story. End of the day, Nina as a main character is so easy to root for, and the romance that sort of evolves throughout the story is one that will completely pull you in, not to mention all of the different society settings, which is great, from the silly little walks you have to take to the parties you have to attend. There's so much here that is just absolutely dazzling and charming. Again, if you love Jane Austen style stories, this is a great book to pick up. I loved it so much. I wish I could pick this book up again for the first time and just have that surprise of falling in love so much with a story that was completely unexpected for me. 5 out of 5 stars, so cute, so lovable, and so dramatic. Next book I wish I could read again for the first time is the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. This might be a bit surprising, perhaps because this series is one that will rip your heart out and kind of eat it in front of you for fun. This is not an easy series to read. It's brutal, it's emotional, and the arc of this book is very intense. That being said, though, this was my first experience reading R.F. Kuang, and this is one of my all-time favorite fantasy series out there. It was just so exceptional, and just the combination of fantasy and historical elements that R.F. Kuang just does so well. It's perfectly done in this trilogy. The Poppy War series follows our main character, Ren, and this is a grim, dark fantasy story that also takes a sharp pivot in book 1. And the beginning of the story, we follow Ren. She is from a poor farming province, but in her country, you're basically able to take a merit-based exam, and you're able to get specific assignments based on your scores. And studies with such a ferocity as she wants to escape her province, actually gets accepted into the most prestigious military academy in the land. Once she arrives, though, she quickly realizes that all of her problems are not solved. As a young woman with a darker complexion who also comes from a poor family, she's quickly targeted by all the the other students and quickly ostracized. Here, though, she also discovers that she has a very specific set of powers tied to shamanism, and as she explores these, she also begins to unlock powers that she did not realize she actually possessed. Again, though, everything changes though when her country is invaded by a powerful empire and the entire country is thrown into war. And again, you begin to see the stark contrast of learning about military and actually having to face the reality of war. And that sort of theme is explored over and over again throughout this trilogy. Ren is a fascinating main character. This book is full of gray morality and definitely decisions that are kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place. There never seems to be a good option, and the brutality and the loss caused by war is something we're constantly faced with over and over again. Ren is merciless in her pursuit of power and safety, and we kind of see that arc throughout this story as well. This series is fascinating, it's brutal, it's dark. So R.F. Kuang's like debut trilogy, and wow, was it just amazing from beginning to end. I love this series. It absolutely captured me. And I do feel like I wish I could read this again for the first time, because I feel like I would love it just as much as I did when I read it. And I read these books so fast. So this is a book I wish I could read again, and if you haven't read it, you need to. Next up, I have a bit of a cozier option, much cozier than the Poppy War, and that is the Nevermoor series, or The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This has got to be one of my current favorite middle grade series. Each book is just so charming, full of magic and friendship and adventure, and it's just so whimsical. These books tend to release around the holiday season, and I just have such fond memories of picking these books up, enjoying like a fire, a beautiful holiday landscape, and just having a delightful time. That being said though, I wish I could just like bottle that feeling up and reread this entire trilogy from beginning to end for the first time during the holiday season once again, because it's just so delightful. Like, if you want to be charmed, if you want a story full of like love and friendship, like you've got to check these out. I feel like this is like a new age gotta read middle grade series. Magic School and Trials, this is it, I'm telling you. But if you're not familiar, the first book is called Nevermoor, and we're introduced to our main character Morgan Crow. And where she lives, she's sort of been deemed as cursed, and anything that kind of has gone wrong in this town is always blamed on her. Also said that she is supposed to die on her 11th birthday, but instead, a very mysterious man arrives on like his hot air balloon and whisks her away to a whole new place called Nevermoor. There she learns about her magic. She learns that magic exists in all different sorts of ways, and now she lives with her new guardian Jupiter at his magical, ever-changing hotel, and also begins her inductee process into a secret society. But in book 1, to get inducted into this magical school slash secret society, she has to take on a variety of trials to not only learn her magic, but also prove that it's worthy of being chosen. So book 1 is really trial oriented. You meet Morgan Crow, begins to make friends. We're introduced to this magical world full of whimsy, and just, it's so clever. There's also a lot of holiday scenes in each book in the series that have been released so far. So it really does make a wonderful November and December read. So cozy, so cute. I just want to read this over and over again. So yes, I would happily sell my soul to be able to read this again for the first time. Next up is another all-time favorite, just so beautiful, so lyrical. The journey I went on with this series, I was truly obsessed. And the series I'm talking about is the Bear and the Nightingale series by Catherine Arden. This is a series I talk about a lot on my channel because I truly love it so much. And I also feel like it perfectly represents like a culmination of so many things that I love as a reader. Like, this is a blueprint, a stereotype kind of series for myself when I think about like what I love to read. If you're not familiar, the Bear and the Nightingale series is kind of set in the 15th, 16th century of Russia, and we follow our main character Vasya. And when we first find her in book 1, she is a young child, and she lives on her father's remote compound in the wilderness of Russia. And in her town, religion and like traditional folklore really mix amongst the villagers, but at the beginning of this tale, her father has just recently remarried, and she is very devout. She has sworn to get rid of any practice of traditional folklore in the town. Vasya realizes that this could actually put everyone in grave danger, and she sees this sort of evil magic creeping out of the forest. So she decides to take on this evil in attempts of saving everyone around her that she loves. So begins the beginning of this trilogy. Book 1 is really introducing us to Vasya, seeing her grow up, seeing her be introduced to her magic, but the rest of the series is truly a journey. Vasya continues to kind of tap into her own own power and kind of seek and seize that power. And what I also love about this series, besides the beautiful, entrancing writing, is how much history and society of this time is really embedded within this tale as well. It creates some very intense and emotionally charged situations, and I really think helps build a really complex historical fantasy story. I love it so much, and another perfect read. I wish I could read for the first time again this winter because it's amazing. Like, I have been searching and searching for a historical fantasy series to hit me in the same way this has, and in some ways I found some beautiful historical fantasy books, but writing and the setting and the magic and our main character in this are just spectacular. Speaking of spectacular character journeys, the next book I have to recommend is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This is by far and away one of the best fantasy standalones I simply have ever read, and I think about it all of the time. Just the characters, the arcs that we experience in the story will break you. At least it broke me. And this also has one of the best sort of depictions of motherhood in fantasy I have really come across in a long time. It was beautiful, and I love this work so much. And if you haven't read it, you need to. And this story is set in the Kaigenese Empire, which is a really isolation-focused empire. And specifically, most of this book takes place in the Kunsangi Peninsula, which is known to have the most powerful warriors in the land. Here, they use ice magic. The use of elemental magic in this book is also one of my favorite elements. The combat scenes are brutal and so well written. In this book specifically, we have two main characters. The first is Mamaru, a young boy who is the heir to a warrior family on this peninsula. He goes to school, he trains, and he dreams of being able to protect his family. Things kind of get difficult for him though when a new student arrives at his school and begins to introduce concepts that he's never learned before, and kind of has to confront some of the propaganda he has heard his entire life. And when he begins to have questions, he goes to our other main character, Mizaki, who is his mother. Mizaki herself has a very complicated past. Presently, she is a mother and she raises her children in isolation in her family's compound. Her past is that of a rebel. She went to school in a faraway land, and she kind of was raised outside of the government-approved messaging that everyone else on the peninsula has had. But ever since she has arrived back home, she has sworn to put her sword away and just raise her children. But as Mamaru begins to ask questions, her past begins to sort of resurface and things begin to get complicated. More so, there is also danger on the horizon as another very powerful empire and a political rival to the Kaigenese Empire begins their operation to try to take over this place once again. And so it appears that war might be on the horizon. This series is so emotional. The points of views and the characters we have in this series, you quickly fall in love with them. They're so dynamic, and as you begin to grow and understand who they are based on their experiences, you fall in love. Specifically, as I said again, Misaki is one of the most fascinating characters I've ever come across in fantasy. Her arc and her past, everything about it is just so exceptionally done. Again, all of this is combined with a highly intense political and military situation that's also so well written. The amount of successful pacing the author was able to accomplish to build up this moment of tension in this standalone fantasy novel, so well done. Amazing. You need to read it. I wish I could read it again for the first time, though again, it did leave me a little emotionally scarred, but sometimes we need a good cry. Next up is a series I just wrapped up earlier this year, and I look at it all the time on my shelf and just think to myself like, wow, that was so good. I loved it. I wish I could read it again already. And the series I'm talking about is the Senlin Ascend series by Josiah Bancroft. I love everything about this fantasy series. Weird, whimsical, dark, and the writing style also leans in a literary fiction fashion. The characters of the series continue to grow, and you fall in love with each and every one of them. The escalation of the plot is just amazing, and just the journey we go on with our characters and just learning about this very strange place throughout all of these books was so amazing. But if you're not familiar, the Senlin Ascend series follows our main character, Senlin, and he has always dreamed of going to this very mysterious place called the Tower of Babel. This tower is made up of countless floors, seemingly never-ending, and full of so many people. Interesting thing about this tower as well is that each floor kind of has its own flavor, its own style, its own dangers, and its own sort of political makeup. Before arriving at this tower, Senlin had very romanticized ideas of what this this experience was going to be. And so he was thrilled to kind of arrive here on his honeymoon with his new wife. Unfortunately though, right when he arrives at this place with his new wife, they get separated, and so begins Senlin's journey throughout this tower in hopes of finding her and reuniting with her once again. The series is just absolutely fascinating. First and foremost, the setting of this tower is just amazing. It's bizarre, it's dark, it's nefarious. You never know who to trust, what exactly is even going on. Exploring these different floors with Senlin was honestly one of my favorite parts of this book. This incredible setting also paired with such likable characters. You meet a plethora of people on this journey, and so many of them you fall in love with and also encounter their points of view as well. It is just such a well-constructed fantasy series. The escalation of everything, the ballooning of this plot, and slowly being introduced to the inner workings of this tower in a very steampunk-like fashion just worked so well. The writing, the characters, everything about this was so amazing. Each book really grew on itself as well, and the entire series, in my opinion, was a great success. I loved it. I wish I could read it again for the first time because it was just amazing and so unique. And this video would not be this video if I didn't include one of my all-time favorite authors. I think about how much I love all of her books all of the time, and I wish, honestly, I could start from the beginning of the journey to the end once more because they are just all so good. The series I'm going to specifically be talking about is the Tawny Man series by Robin Hobb. I think I included the Ship of Magic series in the last version of this video, so I thought let's include Tawny Man because wow, was this trilogy also just amazing as well. Emotional, so emotional. The amount of tears I shed through books 1, 2, and 3 are honestly uncountable. This is probably the hardest I've cried in a long time, and just the writing and the pacing of it was superb. It's kind of difficult to talk about the synopsis of this particular trilogy as it is like the third trilogy within the world of Robin Hobb. And understand you're once again meeting our main characters, Fitz and the Fool, who we were introduced to in the Farseer trilogy. Many years have passed since the events of the original trilogy, and we're once again following Fitz as he has to take on a very impossible mantle. So much of Robin Hobb's work is a beautifully done slow pacing where she gives her characters a lot of time and space to kind of deal with and confront their emotions. A lot of the stories that we follow with Fitz specifically is him kind of having to confront the trauma of being the chosen one. So much of Fitz's life is sacrificing anything and everything he could ever want for himself, for the crown, and how the responsibility of doing this altered his life forever. And you see him in the beginning of this series still processing all of that pain, but also slowly begin to make steps to create change in his life. And Fitz is also joined with, once again, by the Fool, one of the most interesting and dynamic fantasy characters I've ever come across ever. And their relationship specifically is one that is so deep and so emotional and beautiful. I challenge you not to cry while reading this. And keep in mind, all of this stunning, slow moving character work put in the midst of a very complicated and fast-paced like political situation, which I don't really want to say too much about because spoilers, but just know all of this stunning character writing is paired with a very bloody and dangerous and complicated political scenario. And it's just this combination of things is why Robin Hobb is so impressive, because she has fascinating plots. She has such believable characters you would bleed for. And that is why the Tawny Man series is one of the best things I've ever read. And I wish I could read all of Robin Hobb's books again for the first time. And I also feel like her series are one that I'm going to reread over and over and over again for the rest of my life. But that is how I feel. Alrighty guys, those are 7 books I would sell my soul to read again for the first time. Please let me know down below some books you feel this way about, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!